Thank you, gentlemen. Sohail bhai, assalamu alaikum. So we have, of course, another illustrious panel with one international bank and with the regulator and, of course, with Telenor here. So I think this should be very, interesting dialogue we should have. Sohail bhai, I'll start with you. अभी आपने थोड़ी डिस्कशन भी की थी इसी चीज़ के ऊपर where you touched upon the security aspects as well. मैं ये पूछना चाह रहा हूँ कि जो ट्रस्ट एंड सिक्योरिटी का जो एलिमेंट है, आई थिंक इट इज़ द मोस्ट क्रिटिकल इन द फाइनेंशियल इंक्लूजन प्रोसेस एंड इन द ओवरऑल digital landscape. And how is the regulator or the state bank dealing with these challenges, and how is it really helping the industry to overcome these challenges, especially on this front? Thank you.
Thank you, Nejib Saab, and I'll speak in English because I can see a few foreigners here. So trust is very important, because if customers lose trust in digital payments, in the financial system as a whole, then everything is going to collapse. We have been implementing standards. That's, I think, the first thing that we need to do. Card payments, online payments, and we have been doing that. We have been working, we try to work very closely with other stakeholders in the industry. So the banks are there, payment institutions are there. We work very closely with PTA because a lot of things happen from the telco side as well. We also talk to NADRA as to how we can use their services for enhancing the security aspect in digital payments. We do that all the time. We also have discussions within the central bank as to what to do. And I think the next thing that we are thinking about is the liability structure. So people, fraudsters call, unsuspecting people, unsuspecting women, senior citizens. They call them and they ask for, they tell them that your account is being, monitored. You have got AML issues. I'm calling from your bank. And so please give me your password and I'll reset everything. And they do so. And in the process, they end up losing money. So what we are saying is that we are giving a comprehensive framework to the industry that prescribes controls, that asks the industry to do and implement new systems to what we think is important. But I think no matter what we do, the fraudster would always be ahead of the industry. So we are thinking of changing the liability structure. And we are saying that let's ask banks and everyone that in case of a fraud, you return the money in 3 days to the customer. You return the money. And if you don't want to do that, implement the controls, enhance your monitoring. Because if you don't do that, don't penalize the customer for something. The one thing that I've come to hate is the word of awareness. Create awareness. Awareness, when you say awareness, you are actually saying that the customer is responsible. You see? So yes, awareness would be there. We work with industry and the PBA to run ads and all that. We'll continue to do that. But I think we need to work on the liability structures, especially for interbank fund transfers.
Thank you. My next panelist, Irfan Lodhi Saab, from CEO. He's the CEO of Mashreq Bank. Irfan, can you just give us a little brief about yourself and about Mashreq Bank? Thank you.
Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Thank you, Nejib Saab. So, first of all, it's great to be back. Thank you for the warm welcome, everyone. 7 years in exile, back to where I started. So I've spent most of my life here, born in Karachi, Pakistan. I've worked across foreign banks over here in Pakistan, and then I moved to an international assignment in a foreign bank. Fortunately, unfortunately, 6 years back, I joined Mashreq Bank when Mashreq was embarking on a new journey. Normally what we get to hear about Mashreq, and that's what I heard about the bank as well, well, it's a traditional bank. It's the oldest bank in the UAE. The only reason why I left a regional role from my previous organization, which is actually a global organization, was based on what Mashreq was planning on doing at that time, which was effectively 3 things. The first thing was, in very simple words, on paper, we wanted to create a completely separate neobank. Now, not that exciting at that point in time, but the two things which really excited me were the approach. The first approach was that we were completely shifting away from your traditional tech stacks. The second big thing was we were completely reorganizing how banks work. And what do I mean by that? We're all familiar with agile way of software development nowadays. Believe it or not, 6 years back, Mashreq introduced agile work of business management. So just to give you an example, when I joined in and the stream which I was running, my team, my direct team had representation from tech, DevOps, business, product, collections, risk. That entire team directly reported to me, fully agile, while the governance and all was managed through the respective chapters. So I think the combination of these three things is what really excited me to join Mashreq. And yes, then there was no turning back. I actually feel like I just joined a few months back. It has been such a roller coaster.
Well, Mashreq, as we all know, is one of the receivers of the digital bank license in Pakistan. So, what opportunities and challenges are you seeing? Because, I mean, what particular need will you be addressing that other banks are not addressing? So, if you can just, give us some insights.
Sure. So I think it'll be a bit unfair, at this point to compare, in terms of what we can put on the table, because I think there's a lot of work which has been happening in the market, and of course, Pakistan being my own country, I've been keeping track of it. I actually even started a Facebook page some time back called FinTech Pakistan. It has 4 likes to be exact. So in all honesty. It's a matter of perspective. So I'll share 3 challenges which we actually assessed when we were deciding if we want to apply for a license. And why I say perspective? Because these 3 challenges were actually viewed internally as opportunities, right? So the first one, the big challenge globally with digital or neobanks is trust. When I say trust, it's both in terms of keeping your money with a non-traditional financial institution. Second is trust in terms of cybersecurity. I'm not saying this because I'm seated next to Sohail Saab out of fear. I actually mean this. The second big thing which we considered was the regulatory environment, right? And the third thing was the state of datization in the country. Now, on the trust side, we started checking boxes. 55 years in the UAE. We have a very well-established tech stack. We run our own Cat A data center in the UAE, not just for Mashreq. We run almost 8 financial institutions through it across the GCC. So we thought that we can actually go in, provide that peace of mind and comfort, which comes with a traditional banking organization, along with the safety, security, convenience, and innovation, which a digital bank can provide. On the regulatory side, globally we are a global clearing, USD clearing player as well. We are present across 13 odd jurisdictions, all the primary jurisdictions. I myself have been fortunately unfortunate to have interacted with 5 regulators across 5 markets. And without any bias, I actually mean this. I think the regulators and the regulatory environment in Pakistan is very conducive to an overall digital transformation of the economy. And this is just not words. A very good example are the CSP regulations which just came in. For a bank like Mashreq, it saves us huge replication cost. We can provide the same level of cyber security which we provide globally. Plus, we'll be able to leverage all our intelligent tech and innovation and bring it over to Pakistan.
This brings me to a related area, which I think we have touched upon earlier today as well. But before we begin, our next panelist, Mr. Mudassar Aqil, he needs no introduction, but for the sake of the audience, Mudassar, can you just give us a brief about yourself and Telenor?
Thank you, Najib Saab. I represent Telenor Microfinance Bank. We have been granted an NOC for the digital bank. We still have to earn it. I have to be very technically correct. We have our regulator present on the panel. So there are many steps in getting the license and conversion, and we are very proud that we are the only incumbent who has been selected from among a long list of applicants. Easypaisa is our payment brand. It's a household name. Easypaisa started mobile payments in Pakistan. Since inception, we have opened 33 million accounts. So we have 33 million registered users. That's almost 1 in 4 Pakistani adults. And 1/3 of them, a little over 1/3 of them are also monthly active users. So, we are essentially a digital first bank already for a long time. And this allows us the now regulatory space to actually improve our product menu and some of the services that we couldn't offer before due to various regulatory restrictions. But just to give you some more perspective, we process 4,000 transactions per second, and we are the bank of a common Pakistani. The long tail of those 70% people who are unbanked in the country are essentially the people we serve. Similarly, the small and micro enterprises who remain unbanked largely and credit starved, those are the people that we serve. So that's why we exist. And this is what we have done since inception. So we look forward to, I think there is now a convergence of multiple factors in the country where, like Sohail Saab covered in his presentation, we have covered a long journey over the last many decades, but particularly in the last 1 decade, in terms of putting in place all of these essential building blocks. We have the benefit of having a digitally verifiable ID in the form of Nadra issued CNIC, and now on top of it, we have full digital onboarding. We have a fast payment system in Rast, and we have a very enabling regulatory environment with all different a suite of different licenses, right? So now the onus is really on practitioners to actually connect the dots, create solutions, and actually build something that 70% of Pakistan can use, which remains unbanked. So that's what we very much look forward to continue to make a contribution in that space.
Great. So earlier we were discussing, and I think since morning, we've talked about, and I think in many other seminars about the data being the oil, for this industry. Of course, you've been in operation in Pakistan for quite some time. And I think banks and telcos sit on the largest pool of data, of customer data. So how does Telenor now see using this asset towards innovation and really to connect the dots, because the quality of data is the other important thing apart from just data itself. So how do you see that using that to build up your revenues and adding new products and services using the data?
Yeah, just to clarify one point, that Telenor is one of the 2 shareholders in the bank. So Ant Group is our second shareholder, and we are completely telco agnostic. So we don't work just with Telenor. More than 50% of our user base is actually SIM holders of non-Telenor SIMs, right? So we work with actually all 4 telcos. And in terms of using the data, I think GSM data does provide a lot of value and promise, but we have actually moved beyond GSM data, and we are essentially more focused on the payment data. Because now payment data has gained enough scale in the country that we can actually use that. As you correctly pointed out, that data is the new oil. So just to give you one example, that we give now digital loans. These are without any human contact, completely digital loans, which are also called nano loans, very small amount, less than 10,000 rupees. almost all of them, which are disbursed in a matter of few seconds, and we are giving over 10,000 of these loans on a daily basis, which is purely using payment data, which is not really based on GSM data. So GSM data gave us in the first phase, based on which the initial algorithms were built, and then we trained our models using the payment data, and with now over 11 million monthly active users, and the ecosystem really has gained some scale. We think that we can continue to work with all the telcos, and more importantly, we are actually very keen on working with non-telco data also. So there's a lot of other data which is available in the ecosystem that can be utilized, that we look forward to working with.
Great. Sohail Saab, we've touched upon financial inclusion, earlier today as well. And with all the institutions, I think there are 11 microfinance, branchless banks operating apart from all other banks, microfinance institutions, NBFIs. So there's a huge pool of financial sector, trying to increase, the financial access. But how do you see the progress? Because, we've been at it for quite some time and we are still at a very low level, I should say, of financial inclusion. So how do you see the progress, and what can you advise the financial institutions, especially the new digital retail banks coming in, to go about increasing this?
Najib Saab, I think if you compare from the past 10 years, we have made significant progress. We move away from 8%, 9% to now 24, 25% people who have bank accounts. But the main question is that to what extent they are able to use those accounts. So opening of accounts is just not, or of wallets, I think it's not sufficient. And I think a bigger problem is the prevalence of cash in the economy. And our cash to GDP ratio is really high. Currency in circulation is really, really high. And that shows the larger problem of people maybe not trying to be financially included. They don't want to be financially included despite all the work that we've done. And I would just like to ask this question, that why would a person in Pakistan want to be financially included? I mean, they're okay with the cash that they have. It's ubiquitous. It can be accepted everywhere. It's free. If they lose it, then they lose it, but they are their own kings and masters. They don't have to open an account to be financially included. They don't want to ensure that they have adequate KYC. And even if they open an account with a bank, they don't have to pay fees to use that money that is their own, to get a card, to do interbank fund transfers or whatever. And then on top of it, most of them don't have access to credit or other products which actually gives them a reason to be financially included. So in our view and in my own view, I think everybody's to be blamed for this. But most importantly, we as an industry have not been able to adequately address to customers' needs. Now, what's our diagnosis for that? I think the first thing is that in Pakistan, the cost of acquiring a transaction is very high. It's very high. And imagine that cost, that a person who is transacting in cash is not documented, doesn't have to think about the tax guy all the time, and don't have to pay money and all that. So when you ask somebody to be onboarded, you are actually increasing his cost of transaction, and you are also incurring a cost of transaction on your own. And I think that's one of the reasons that because of this high cost of transaction, we only see banks targeting high-value customers. You see, and the low-income people are mostly there out of this. That's one thing. The second is, if we talk about our financial system in general, but digital systems in particular, they are absolutely not user-friendly. They're very difficult to operate. They're very difficult to understand. We start with the language, so most of them are English. And then you move on to the other parts of the country. Even the terms are difficult to understand. So our financial system is extremely, I must say not extremely, maybe somebody would be offended, but it's very difficult to use. Even educated people are scared, something may happen to my money. And I think that's one of the expectations from the new digital banks, that they'll bring in a good interface, user interface. The third thing is, like I mentioned, liability structure. So we need to have standards, we need to have protocols in place that would enhance the trust of people in using the formal system. But they should not be penalized in case of a misuse by someone else. And that's what we are doing with the fraud situation right now. So we need to find a solution for that as well. So State Bank is also looking into it. We have started working on UI UX, for example, to see what works and what doesn't work. Opening of an account has to be easy. I think we need to look at KYC, and like I mentioned in the data part, we need to think what other parts of data we can bring in to strengthen the KYC and let people earn what have access to credit. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but that depends on our thinking, our customer orientation, our ability to hear the voice of customer, to see what they were saying and to address to their needs, and our ability and capability to use new technologies to find solutions to old problems. Thank you.
You talked about the digital lending part also, and now more and more, even fintechs especially, they are coming up with the behavioral scoring model as well, apart from your credit bureau and all that. So are you working with them and with the banks to maybe look at the behavioral scoring aspects as well, to be used in conjunction with the normal credit review or underwriting process?
Yes, like I mentioned about the open banking and the technical sandbox that we're using. The idea is to give the capability to fintechs so that they can look at transactions that are being done and then come up with new solutions. But I would like to add to the earlier question that you asked to Mudassar, was how they plan to use data. I think when we talk of data, and especially big data, we need to break silos. We need to find a way whereby people can collaborate, share their data. Silo-based data in small vacuums is of no use. It's of very little use. You can just use it for your own purpose. So how can we bring that data together? And I think that was one of the motivations for the CSP regulations that we issued. You can't have data repositories being built without having access to shared hosting arrangements. So I think that's one thing where the industry needs to work. And we need to see what new tools we can have. And again, that's an expectation from the new players as well, that they'll be able to bring in practices from other jurisdictions about data and how we can use that data to enhance the KYC and, like you mentioned, use it for other purposes.
Earlier, we were also discussing, the eKYC and having one pool of repository for eKYC. So each bank is not doing it again and again. So how is, that, coming along, and how are you supporting that initiative?
We are working with the Pakistan Banks Association to build a shared KYC functionality. But my view is that it has to go, especially for KYC, it has to go beyond banking and payments. There is a lot of non-financial data that could be of extreme importance for KYC. So for example, if a person goes to her, she works in a factory, blue-collar worker, she goes on time and come back on time. So that punctuality aspect, that aspect that she doesn't have anything against her with her employer, and she has an impeccable record, then should become part of the KYC as well. And I think that's where we need to work on the use of technologies. Distributed data is an emerging part whereby you can use blockchain for hosting individual data and then finding a way of collating and using it for collaborating.
Thank you. Irfan, now with the digital banks now coming into Pakistan, but globally we have seen that a majority of them are really not doing well in terms of profitability. How do you see that aspect when now, as you enter into the Pakistan market?
I think two things which I previously mentioned, right? Trust and the regulatory environment, which I've touched upon. Barring that, there are two specific areas which I feel the banks will really have to focus on. The first one is, today if you see, most of these banks are targeting the same products and same segments of a very certain retail profile. We've seen a lot of work happening in that retail individual space, and globally, you hardly see much work happening in any of the upper or higher tiers. I mean, there have been some examples, like Acorn and Stashaway. The blow-up which happened on Glint is an example on the wealth side. Barring that, that's where the work is concentrated, and that's the same segment traditional banks go after. The second is the focus on sustainable long-term alternate revenue streams, right? That is something which digital banks will have to focus on creating. I'll just take a few minutes on this. There's this, concept I abbreviated a few months back in another conference, which we call the next episode in banking, right? So episode being the abbreviation. And it's interesting that a lot of speeches we heard today from Nadeem Saab, from Sohail Saab, were actually around it. So I'll just use that for a quick summary. So the E in the episode, the embedded finance, is something which is very important, and we spoke about it. Banks can try and create some of those capabilities. What we have been focusing on globally, and it works, is to actually have a platform or banking as a service play, of course, supported by the regulators. And that has to be a completely separate revenue stream for the banks. Next is purposeful. We don't think about it too much, but I think the shift from CSR to ESG is very much real now, and we all need to adopt to it. I'll give you a very simple example. During the pandemic, we gave hundreds of millions of dollars of waivers to our existing customers who are impacted. And we did it very simply through a very simple AI, which would read your open banking data for salary loss. That's it. So it was all real time. The benefit was real time. What was unbelievable was that we saw almost 50% increase in retention rates in the months to follow. Moving on to I, not for innovation this time, but for intelligent, something we've been talking about. And intelligence is where data comes in. For us, this has three big elements. So first, plain and simple, we need to use our increase of data at least by 20x at a bare minimum. Second is what we have done over the past 4-5 years, where we have invested heavily in three specific areas. So data engineering, because at times it's easy to source data, but to have that data in a well-structured form is a big challenge. Cognitive analytics, so you're actually able to structure that data and start utilizing it. And intelligent infra, so you can continue to absorb and grow without incurring too much cost. Next is security. I won't spend too much time on it, hot subject. So definitely sustainable revenues have to be secure. Omni-channels. Now, very interesting, omni-channels can actually be a revenue stream. And again, in some form or the other, we have been touching upon this, right? When we look at omni-channels, what comes to mind is a full transaction suite on a laptop, tablet, cell phone. That's not what it's about. We have to focus on individual transaction financial needs, which have to be engraved in customers' existing touch points, rather than, so more of like an invisible banking, which you may call it. Just to end this conversation, moving into the end of the episode, it's digitally driven ecosystems, which is the next big thing we've been talking about. And you'll get to hear this a lot from Mashreq, co-creation. We cannot do this alone. It's impossible. We have to co-create together. And to do that, we believe we have the right tech stack. We have a completely hollow core. We have a well orchestrated layer of microservices. We have a completely open banking API structure. We even have an API developers portal where even you can consume a lot of our innovative technologies and components. We have our own extensive library of components, which is 100% replicable. So I think once you're structured like this and you have the right regulation to support these integrations without getting into a licensing conversation again and again, I think you can actually create a very sustainable, profitable business.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Ehsan Jabbar. Have a tech, F&B, and real estate background. I'm here specifically to see. I'm not a pure banking background, but I am since operating in tech, and I am passionate about tech growth in Pakistan. So my question to both the gentlemen over here from Telenor and Mashreq is, I've seen both of you doing really good marketing and capturing share. Once you come up with your product, which I believe you still haven't launched, at least Mashreq, how fast do you see a capturing market? What are your targets over the next 5 years? What are your expectations?
So since Mudassar already has a fully functional customer base and plans, I'll take that question first. So see, let's and I'll try to keep it short. Let's try and understand that for us, this is a marathon. This is not a sprint. That's the first thing. The intent is not how quickly to capture market share. For the digital bank, the intent is how deeply can we embed ourselves in Pakistan's ecosystem. That's what our tech is built for. Revenue share, these are outputs. And I think that's the big mindset change which we all need to think about. You think revenue, you think market share when you go out with products and you try and sell them. And you do that because you have high cost structures. If you have a cost structure which allows you to centrally have a team of 50 developers churning out services and APIs every 2 weeks, that's our normal sprint, then you don't worry about this. You need to be in a state where you're able to test, learn, accelerate in a country like Pakistan and pull back if something does not work. So I think that's what we are looking at. Of course, we would want to be a profitable and significant player in the market, but I think from a priority perspective, our priority first is to contribute to digitization of the ecosystems and be a significant player in the market with the help of all our partners and partner banks.
Good afternoon. This is Usman Khan speaking. I was very pleased to hear from the regulator that we have an open AI framework where we have data collaboration and we had a sandbox created. Is that available presently to utilize, and can banks, telcos, and any other players connect into it so we can start utilizing it? Fintechs can start utilizing it, and other players within the Pakistani market can start utilizing it. India was quoted as an example earlier, as well as the United Kingdom has that as well. So it'll be very, very good to see State Bank leading on that front and making it available. Thank you.
Yes, I'll take that. Thank you. Yes, the first cohort for the technical sandbox finished on 31st January this year. So we are planning on the future cohorts as well, but the idea is to, this was just a sandbox of sandboxes to see how we can do it and what we can learn. But the results are very encouraging, and inshallah very soon. We are planning to put in place different sandboxes. One would definitely be for payments via RAST, and the other for other data sharing purposes. Hopefully we'll do it soon.